Hello, I am Mario and this is my LT2 project. To source a hypothesis for this project, I brainstormed and came up with three separate possible ideas. The average life performer's hearing loss is decreased through the time due to technological advances of ear protection. United States citizens have the highest chance of being murdered by their wife in the month of March, and the melanin in your skin is directly proportional to the latitude of where you live. I then made a graph that would help me choose one based on a few variables. I settled on the second idea as it scored the most points, and now I needed to find a suitable list online to get my information from. To find a list, I went on the website Kaggle and found a spreadsheet of 600,000 murder cases in the United States from 1980 to 2014. This list had many columns of which I needed to remove most, but had two key ones, month and relationship. I needed to isolate these columns, so I downloaded the sheet and went to program on Thonny. In the coding platform Thonny, I downloaded and imported Pandas, a package that made it much easier to handle long lists such as this one. Using Pandas, I imported the data from as a CSV file, and to shorten it into the two columns I needed, I made a list which selected said columns and removed the rest. The next step was to go into the relationship column and make sure all the values under equaled husband. This column represents what the victim was to the perpetrator and not the other way around. This reduced the rows in the list from 600,000 to around 9,000 and the columns from 24 to 2. After cleaning the data, I needed to analyze it. Usually, Pandas will only allow a certain number of rows to be viewed at a certain time. I had to pass through this to analyze the code which is seen here. After analyzing the data, I realized my hypothesis was wrong and saw that most murders occurred in July. To prove this, I needed to find a statistical measure using functions provided by Pandas and Python itself. Due to my data relying on strings rather than integers, measuring the information was quite restricted, but I made the most of what I could do. The measures I found were the earliest and latest recorded murder, the most common type of murder, the month with the most murders, which was July with a whopping 842 murders, which is 10.9% occurring in it, the month with least murders, which interestingly was the month with Halloween, and finally, the range of murders, which was 185. My hypothesis was indeed disproven, as July had most murders, but more on this later as I need to graph this data now. To graph the data, I use the Python package matplotlib, which makes graphing a lot easier with the various types of graphs you can make. I stuck to the line graph, which suited my data the best. I started out by importing the clean data and making 24 variables, 2 for each month. The first variable picked out the rows which had each respective month in them and stored them in a list, and the second variable was used to find the length of the list, which was what I'd use in the graph. I then made two other separate lists, one with the name of all the months, and another with the respective number of murders occurring in each month. I then made a graph with a space for each month on the x-axis and a range of numbers on the y-axis, which ended up looking like this. This now brings me to the conclusion. In conclusion, my hypothesis was proven wrong. The month with most murders of wives killing their husbands was July, which implies that the highest chance of being murdered by your wife is in said month. An interesting thing that the graph showed was that there was a significant dips in murder in the autumn and spring, which both have milder weather. This can mean that weather is a factor in the chance of these murders happening, which is an idea for a future project. I came across various challenges such as finding a way to graph the information and to be able to run the initial spreadsheet with 600,000 rows, but I overcame them with computational thinking. I followed the design process stages carefully to ensure that I succeeded and suggested two possible ways to prevent this many murders from occurring: putting police officers and first responders on high alert during the summer to prevent attempted murder, and free couples counseling during this time as well. Thank you for listening.